we're now going to turn to a very special guest. We have Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Cruz, thank you so much for taking time away from your busy schedule to join us today.
Steve, very glad to be with you. I hope you're doing well.
Senator Cruz, we want to go to national security, but before we do that, there's a report out. That was our lead story overnight that national security is now overtaking jobs, I think, for the first time since 2006 as a primary interest of the American people when selecting a president. But along the jobs route, you came out, we had Senator Sessions on yesterday. You and Senator Sessions jointly sponsored and came out with potentially a major bill yesterday. Can you walk us through it and how you believe that's going to help American workers to keep and retain their jobs?
Well, sure. Jeff Sessions and I together, we launched a major reform bill on the H-1B visa program. As you know, the H-1B visa program was designed to bring in high-skilled workers, and I have long been a supporter of bringing in high-skilled workers because I think that benefits economic growth. But unfortunately, what we've seen in recent months is report after report after report of large companies abusing the program and bringing in workers who are not high-skilled, who tend to be mid-level or even low-level IT workers, and then bringing them in and laying off American workers and to add insult to injury, forcing the American workers to train their foreign replacements before they leave. And that is not only directly contrary to what the program was meant to do, but it is an absolute abuse and unacceptable. And so Jeff Sessions and I together have assembled reform legislation to fix the H-1B program, to require, among other things, that anyone coming in on an H-1B visa have an advanced degree, to require certification from the university academic standards, to prohibit companies, if you're bringing in H-1B visas, from laying off workers. You can't do both. And to ensure that they cannot be paying foreign workers materially less than they are U.S. workers. And we've designed this together really to work in concert with what I have announced, which is that if I'm elected president, I intend to impose a moratorium on the H-1B program and audit every company that has received these visas to determine whether they're abusing the program. And if they're abusing the program, they will be suspended from the program, and if they violated the law, they'll be prosecuted.
Well, thank you. I got to tell you, I think people are very excited. Yesterday when they saw the press release, and then today we're going to have a big story up on it. And I know there's a lot of enthusiasm among our listeners and readers about that. I want to turn to a second about national security. If you do win the nomination, and if you do win the election, and you're Commander-in-Chief, can you walk people through how President Ted Cruz, as Commander-in-Chief, what is your initial plan to prosecute this war?
Well, it will start with the very beginning, with the Commander-in-Chief setting the objective that we will defeat radical Islamic terrorism, that our strategy, to borrow a page from Ronald Reagan, will be very simple. We win, they lose. And in particular, we will utterly destroy ISIS. We won't degrade them. We won't weaken them. We will utterly destroy them. And how will we do that? We'll start by using overwhelming air power. It's one of the tremendous advantages of our military. To put it in context, Steve, in the first Persian Gulf War, we launched roughly 1,100 air attacks a day. We carpet bombed the Iraqi army, and 37 days later, it took less than a day and a half for our troops to mop up what was left. Right now, the Obama administration is launching anywhere between 15 and 30 air attacks a day. That's 15 and 30 compared to 1,100. What we have now is really pinprick foreign policy. It's photo-op foreign policy. We should use overwhelming air power. And then we should be arming the Kurds. The Kurds, the Peshmerga, the fighting forces of the Kurds, are longtime allies of ours. They are actively fighting ISIS right now on the ground. They're having significant successes. But ISIS is using American military equipment that they've seized in Iraq. The Kurds, unfortunately, are using outmoded equipment, and the Obama administration refuses to arm them because of political concerns about Baghdad. We need to be arming the Kurds and using them as boots on the ground, and then to the extent that further military force is necessary, we should do whatever is necessary to utterly and completely destroy ISIS.
Is part of your strategy a coalition of frontline nations? I mean, do you want to have buy-in? Would you take the time, like President Bush did really in the early 90s, and then later George Bush did, to build a coalition so that you've got actually frontline nations that are providing not just air assets but also ground forces?
Absolutely, and I think that is particularly important with other Middle Eastern countries that have a direct security interest in stopping ISIS. ISIS poses a mortal threat to them, whether it is Egyptian troops on the ground or Jordanian troops on the ground. We have nations in that region that are our allies and that see the threat of ISIS. But right now, the Obama administration's military effort is so ineffectual that the buy-in we have from those countries is understandably limited. If we have a commander-in-chief that sets out the objective and is willing to do what is necessary to accomplish it, that absolutely should be done with a coalition, but at the same time, it should be the American president leading the objective that we are going to destroy ISIS.
Now, look, you're obviously going to have to play the cards, the hand you kind of take over, right? And, you know, regardless of what you think Obama's done a great job or terrible job, the reality is you're going to have to play some of those cards. The Obama administration has allowed, some would say actually invited, but allowed Russia now to become a major player in that area. How would you deal, particularly now we have Turkey and Russia look like they could potentially have a dust-up. Turkey goes from a very secular country when they sign and become a NATO ally to now it looks like increasingly Islamist. How do you work through this whole Turkey relationship in this and then Russia?
Well, look, the Turkish relationship is complicated. They're a NATO member, but Erdogan has been more and more Islamist, and some of it is, as he's seen the weakness of President Obama. We've seen many countries moving away from our orbit and moving elsewhere. I think you have to work with them, understanding that they're not always reliable allies, but work with them where they can be helpful. Turkey as well has interest in limiting the spread of ISIS, and Russia in particular. Russia, you know, Putin deals with radical Islamic terrorists within Russia, and even though Russia is very much a strategic competitor of ours and at times a significant enemy, I mean, Putin is looking to expand his power, but where our interests align, it is certainly possible for us to work together, and to the extent that Putin is willing to cooperate in targeting ISIS, we should welcome it, but we shouldn't be naive, we shouldn't be gullible, we shouldn't be under any misconception that Putin is our friend.
Before we leave the international aspect, and I realize you're pressed for time, I just want to make sure we're clear. You're saying in a Cruz administration that you would take out the caliphate and their ability to actually govern any territory, monetize any resources. You're talking about the absolute total destruction of their ability to function as not just a terrorist organization, but really trying to become a nation state today.
In every respect, utterly defeating them, so there is no caliphate, there is no nation state whatsoever that is controlled by ISIS, and that the leaders are utterly defeated. They are captured or killed. The objective here should be very simple. You know, radical Islamic terrorism, Islamism, gets stronger and stronger when they have the perception that they're winning. It's one of the most problematic aspects of the failures of the Obama administration, is it lets ISIS tell the story that they're winning, and that America is ineffectual. It's one of the things bin Laden with Al-Qaeda did for years, was tell the story of how ineffectual America was, that they would beat America. When they're losing, when the caliphate is being crushed, it changes the entire dynamic and the momentum. And we need a president who makes clear to every militant on the face of the earth, if you go and join up with ISIS, if you wage jihad against America, you are signing your death warrant. This has to be a full-on objective of complete and utter defeat.
Senator Cruz, in your administration, I don't know if you saw Megyn Kelly last night, but they had a whistleblower from the Department of Homeland Security, and I don't want to get into the details. He's coming on the show later. But it is about the government not pursuing certain leads and certain on the targeting list. There were certain things redacted, certain because of civil liberty concerns inside the State Department, Homeland Security. Certain investigations have been shut down. Can you give people assurance in your administration that whether it's Homeland Security, the FBI, whatever agency is, there's going to be a full and frank discussion of the terror situation in the United States, radical jihad in the United States? I mean, how are you going to handle it? Because I know you're a constitutional lawyer and you're always quite concerned about the Constitution and people's constitutional rights.
Well, sure. I will always defend the Bill of Rights. I've spent virtually my entire life defending the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. But this politically correct doublespeak of the Obama administration is not mandated by the Constitution, and it doesn't make us safe. We need to identify the enemy. It is radical Islamic terrorism, Islamism, which is a political and theocratic view that Sharia law must be imposed by law from the government, and that those who do not share the radical Islamic view must either be forcibly converted or murdered. And that is a profound danger. And we need a government that is clear-eyed and steps up and does what is necessary to defeat it.
Senator Cruz, last thing. I know you're in campaign. You've gone out of your way, I think, particularly compared to a lot of your competitors, not to attack your other rivals and to focus on Hillary Clinton and to talk about what you would do. But over the last couple of days, you certainly have started to draw a contrast between yourself as Commander-in-Chief and Senator Marco Rubio as Commander-in-Chief. And Senator Rubio has really based his entire campaign about, Senator Rubio as the leading hawk. Could you just compare and contrast a second the difference between, you believe, yourself as Commander-in-Chief and Senator Rubio as Commander-in-Chief?
Well, I think we need a Commander-in-Chief whose first priority is keeping this nation safe. And I'll tell you, a critical element of national security is border security. One of the sharpest differences between Senator Rubio and me is that Senator Rubio joined with Chuck Schumer and Barack Obama to try to pass a massive amnesty program. And a component of that amnesty program was that they did not secure the borders. And indeed, the Gang of Eight amnesty program would have given Barack Obama substantially more authority to admit Syrian refugees at a time of massive threats that is profoundly dangerous. What we need is a Commander-in-Chief who is focused on the very real threats facing us and who has demonstrated a consistency in defending U.S. national security interests, but at the same time not getting us involved in Middle Eastern civil wars where we don't have a dog in that fight. There has been a sharp difference between Senator Rubio's foreign policy and mine, and that Senator Rubio agreed.
Senator Cruz, I tell you, I think you've given us enough information. I appreciate you giving us as much time as you have. You've gone over, so thank you very much. We look forward to having you back on as soon as possible, but thank you very much for the information today. Great interview.
Thank you so much. God bless, Steve, and your listeners can always find out more at tedcruz.org, tedcruz.org.
Thank you very much. That's Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Cruz is running for the Republican nomination for the presidency. He just laid out his plan as Commander-in-Chief, both foreign and domestic, and compared and contrasted himself with Senator Marco Rubio.